Ella, Boston, July 3, 2008. Boston had never been this colorful and vibrant, Ella thought. Had she been blind to the city beauty all this time? Aziz spent 5 days in Boston. Every day Ella drove from Northampton to Boston to see him. They had tasty modest lunches in Little Italy, visited the Museum of Fine Arts, took long walks on Boston Common and waterfront, watched the whales in the aquarium, and had coffee after coffee in the busy small cafes of Harvard Square. They talked endlessly on subjects as diverse as the curiosities of local cuisines, different meditations techniques, aboriginal art, gothic novels, birds watching, gardening, growth perfect tomatoes, and the interpretation of dreams, constantly interrupting and completing each other's sentences. Ella didn't remember ever talking so much with anyone. When they are outside on a street, they took care not to touch each other, but that proved to get increasingly difficult. Small peccadilloes become exciting, and Ella started looking forward to a brush of their hands, goaded by a strange courage she never knew she had in her. In restaurants and on the street, Ella held Ajiz's hand, kissed his lips. Not only did she not mind being seen, it felt as if a part of her longed to be seen. Several times they returned to the hotel together, and on each occasion they came very close to making love, but they never did. The morning of the day Aziz was going to fly back to Amsterdam, they were in his house, in his room, his suitcase standing between them like a nasty reminder of the parting to come. "There is something I need to tell you," Ella said. "I have been thinking about this for too long." Aziz raised one eyebrow, acknowledging the sudden shift in Ella's tone. Then he said carefully, "There is something I need to tell you too." "Okay, you go first." "No, you go first." Still smiling her half smile, Ella lowered her gaze, contemplating what to say and how to say it. Finally, she started. "Before you came to Boston, David and I went out one evening and had talked long. He asked me about you. Apparently, he read our emails without my knowledge. I was incredibly angry at him for that, but I didn't deny the truth. About us, I mean." Now Ella raised her eyes with apprehension to see how Aziz would react to what she was about to reveal. "To make a long story short, I told my husband that I loved another man. Outside on the street, the sirens of several fire trucks broke the unusual sound of the city. Ella was distracted momentarily, but then she was able to finish. "It sounds like crazy, I know, but I have been thinking this over very carefully. I want to come with you to Amsterdam." Aziz walked the window and looked down at the hurrying and bustle outside. There was smoke coming out of one of the buildings in the distance, a thick black cloud hovering in the air. He silently prayed for the people who lived there. When he started to speak, it sounded as if he were addressing the entire city. "I would love to take you to Amsterdam with me, but I cannot promise you a future there." "What do you mean?" Ella asked nervously. At this, Aziz walked back, sat by her side, put his hands on hers, and as he kissed it absent-mindedly, said, "When you first wrote to me, it happened to be a very strange time in my life." "You mean there is someone else in your life?" No, sweetheart, no. Aziz smiled a little, and then the smile faded. It's nothing like that. I once wrote you about the 3 stages in my life, remember? Those were the first 3 letters in the Sufi. You never asked me about the 4th stage, and hard as I tried, I couldn't bring myself to tell you. My encounter with letter I. Would you like to listen to it now? Yes, Ella said, although she feared anything and everything that could disrupt this moment. Yes, I would. In a hotel room on that day in July, a few hours prior to his flight back to Amsterdam, Aziz told Ella how he had become a Sufi in 1977, adopting a new name for himself and also, as he had hoped, a new destiny. Ever since then, he had traveled the world as a photographer by profession, a wandering dervish at heart. He had made close friends on 6 continents, people who saw him as part of their family. Though he hadn't married again, he had become the foster father of 2 orphans in Eastern Europe, never taking off the necklace in the shape of the sun that he wore to remind him of Shams of the bridge. Aziz has lived a life by traveling, reading, and teaching in the footsteps of Sufi dervishes, encountering signs of God everywhere and in everything. Then, 2 years ago, he learned about his sickness. It started with a lump on his armpit, which apparently he was late to notice. The lump turned out to be a malignant melanoma, a fatal form of skin cancer. The doctor said it didn't look good, but they had to run several tests before giving him a more definite diagnosis. A week later, they returned with bad news. The melanoma had spread to his internal organ and invaded his lungs. At the time he was 52, he was told he would not make it past 55. Ella moved her lips to say something, but the words did not come out, and her mouth felt bone dry. 2 tears rolled down her cheeks, which she quickly wiped off. Aziz kept speaking, his tone firm and urgent. He said thus commenced a new and in some ways a more productive phase in his life. There were still places he wanted to see, and the first thing he did was find a way to get to them all. He established a Sufi foundation in Amsterdam with worldwide connections. As an amateur ney player, he gave concerts with Sufi musicians in Indonesia, Pakistan, and Egypt, and even made an album with a group of Jewish and Muslim mystics in Cordoba, Spain. He went back to Morocco and visited the lodge where he had met real Sufis for the first time in his life. Master Samit was long dead, and Aziz prayed and meditated by his grave, contemplating on the trajectory his life had followed. Then I retreated to write the novel I had always wanted to write, but in my laziness or lack of courage had postponed endlessly, said Aziz with a wink. You know, it was one of those things I had wanted to do for a long time. I named the book Sweet Blasphemy and sent it to a literary agency in America, not expecting much and at the same time feeling open to all possibilities. A week later, I received an intriguing email from a mystery woman in Boston. Ella couldn't help smile, a weak smile of respectful compassion, tender and pained. Aziz said, ever since that moment nothing had been the same. From a man getting ready to die, he had turned into a man falling in love at a most unexpected time. Suddenly, all the pieces that he thought he would long ago but into peace had been moved. Spirituality, life, family, mortality, faith, and love. He found himself rethinking their meanings again and not wanting to die. This new and final stage of his life he called his encounter with the letter I in the word Sufi. And he said so far this stage had proved to be much more difficult than all the earlier ones, because it had come to a time when he thought he would work through most, if not all, of his inner conflicts, a time when he thought he was spiritually mature and fulfilled. In Sufism, you learn how to die before death. I have gone through each of those stages, step by step. Then, just when I start to think I have got it all neatly sorted, here comes his woman out of nowhere. She writes to me and I write back. After each email, I start waiting for her answer with bated breath. Words become more precious than ever. The whole world turned into a blank screen waiting to be written upon. And I realize I want to get to know this person. I need more time with her. Suddenly, my life is not enough anymore. I realize I am scared of death, and one part of me is ready to rebel against God I have revered and submitted to. But we will have time, Ella said when she found her voice. My doctor tell me I have 16 months, Aziz said, lightly but firmly. They might be wrong or they might be right. I cannot know. You see, Ella, all I can give you is the present moment. That is all I have. But the truth is, no one has more than that. It is just we like to pretend we do. Ella peered down at her feet, leaning sideways, as if part of her were about to fall down and part of her resisted. She started to cry. Don't, please. I wanted you to come with me to Amsterdam more than anything. I wanted to say, let's travel the world together. Let's see distant land, get to know each other people, and admire God's composition together. That would be nice, Ella said, sniffing, like a child offering some bright-colored toy in the midst of her wailing. Aziz's face darkened. He looked away from her toward the window. But I was afraid to ask you. I was even afraid to touch you, let alone make love. How could I ask you to be with me and abandon your family when I had no future to offer you? Cringing all his questions, Ella said, why are we being so pessimistic? You can fight this illness. You can do it for me, for us. Why do we have to fight everything? Aziz wanted to know. We are always talking about fighting inflammation, fighting AIDS, fighting cancer, fighting corruption, fighting terrorism, even fighting extra pounds. Don't we ever say another way of dealing with things? I'm not a Sufi, Ella croaked impassionately. Her voice sounded like the voice of someone else, someone older. At that moment, many thoughts crossed her mind. The death of her father, the pain of losing a loved one to suicide, the years and years of resentment and regret that followed. Sifting through every little bit of memory of the one who is dead. Wondering if things could have been any different than had those details been shuffled differently somewhere. I know you are not a Sufi, Aziz smiled, and you don't have to be one, just be Rumi. That's all I'm asking of you. What do you mean? She asked. Some time ago you asked me if I was Shams, remember? You said, I remember you of him. As happy as I was to hear that, I cannot be Shams. I think he was way beyond and above me. But you can be Rumi if you let love take hold of you and change you, at first through its presence, then through its absence. I'm not a poet either, Ila said this time. Rumi wasn't a poet either, but he was transformed into one. Don't you get it? I'm just a housewife, for God's sake, a mother of 3, Ila exclaimed, breathing in huge gulps. We are all what we are, murmured Aziz, and we are all subject to change. It is a journey from here to there. You can make the journey, and if you are brave enough, and if I am brave enough, we can go to Konya together in the end. That is where I want to die. Ella gasped. Stop talking like that. Aziz watching her for a moment, and then his eyes dropped. There was a new expression on his face now, a distance in his tone, as if he were swiftly drifting away like a dry leaf at the mercy of the wind. Or else, he said slowly, go home, Ella. Go back to your children and your house. You decide, love. Whatever you choose, I will respect your decision. Sulaiman the Drunk, Konya, March 1248. Blood, sweat, and tears. Outsider thinks drunkards are lazy people who have nothing else to do. Little do they know that drinking increasingly amounts of wine every day requires a lot of effort. We carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. Tired and petulant, I was dozing with my head on the table, having a not so pleasant dream. There was a big black bull, angry as hell, chasing me on unfamiliar streets. I ran away from the animal without a clue as to what I had done wrong to stir up him, knocking over stalls and smashing merchandise, drawing the anger of all the vendors in Bazaar. Still running, I entered a thoroughfare that turned out to be Dead End Street, and there I bumped into a mammoth egg, bigger than a house. Suddenly, the egg started to hatch, and out came the ugliest baby bird ever, wet and noisy. I tried to get out of the street, but the mother bird appeared in the sky, glaring down at me as if I had been responsible for the ugliness of her baby. Just as the bird began to descend, its sharp beak and even sharper claws pointed at me. I woke up. I opened my eyes and realized that I had fallen asleep on the table by the window. Though my mouth tasted like rusty nails and I was dying to have a drink, I felt too tired to even move, so I kept resting my heavy head on the table, sinking ever deeper into my stupor and listening to the usual sounds in the tavern. I heard a heated argument rising and falling like a buzz of swimming bees. It came from the man sitting the next table, and though I briefly considered the possibility of turning my head to see who they were, I did not move a muscle. And this is when I overheard that ominous word, murder. At first, I dismissed their talk as drunken ravings. One hears all sorts of things in the tavern and in time learns not to take every spoken word seriously. But there was something in their tone too menacing and potent to disregard. So I pricked my ears and listened. My jaw dropped open when I finally dawned upon me that they were serious. But even deeper was my shock when I understood who was that they wanted to kill. Shams of the bridge. As soon as they left the table, I stopped feigning, slipped and jumped to my feet. Ristos, come here. Be quick, I yelled in panic. What is it this time? Ristos come running. Why are you so distressed? But I couldn't tell, not even him. All of a sudden, everyone looked suspicious. What if there were more people involved in this conspiracy against Shams? I had to keep my mouth shut and my eyes wide open. Nothing, I'm hungry, that's all. I said, could you please bring me some soup? Make it with a lot of garlic, I need to sober up. Risto started at me quizzically, but being used to my moodiness, he did not ask me any more questions. In a few minutes, he brought me a bowl of goat intestine soup, spicy and scratchy, which I ate in haste, my tongue burning. Having sobered up sufficiently, I dashed into the street to warn Shams of the bridge. First, I tried Rumi's house. He wasn't there. Then I went to the mosque, the madrasa, the tea house, the bakery, the hammam. I looked in every store and cellar, on the streets of artisans. I even checked the old gypsy women tent among the ruins in case he had ignored there to get rid of a sore tooth or a bad spell. I looked for him everywhere, my anxiety growing with every passing minutes. Fear beginning to gnaw me. What if it was too late? What if they had already killed him? Hours later, not knowing where else to look, I made my way back to the tavern, downhearted and exhausted. And just like magic, only a few steps away, the tavern door, I bumped right into him. Hello, Sulaiman. You look preoccupied, Shams said, smiling. Oh my God, you are alive, I exclaimed, and ran to his arm. When he managed to pull away from my embrace, Shams stared at me, looking quite amused. Of course I am alive. Do I look like a ghost to you? I smiled, but not for long. My head ached so much that at any time I would have downed a few bottles to get drunk as quickly as possible and doze off. What is it, my friend? Is everything all right? Shams asked suspiciously. I swallowed hard. What if he hadn't believed me when I told him about the plot? What if he thought I would been hallucinating under the influence of wine? And perhaps I was. Even I couldn't be sure. They are planning to kill you, I said. I have no idea who they are. I couldn't see their face. You see, I was sleeping, but I didn't dream. I did have a dream, but it wasn't like that, and I wasn't drunk in either. Well, I had drunk a few glasses, but I wasn't. Shams put hand on my shoulder. Calm down, my friend. I understand. You do? Yes, now go back to the tavern, and don't you worry about me. No, I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you, I objected. These people are serious. You need to be careful. You cannot go back to Rumi's house. That's the first place they will look for you. Oblivious to my panic, Shams stayed silent. Listen, Darvi. My house is small and a bit stuffy, but if you don't mind that, you can stay with me as long as you want. Thank you for your concern, Shams murmured. But nothing happens outside of God's will. It is one of the rules. The world is erected upon the principle of reciprocity. Neither a drop of kindness nor a speck of evil will remain unreciprocated. Fear not the plots, deception, or tricks of other people. If somebody is getting a trap, remember, so is God. He is the biggest plotter. Not even a leaf stirs outside God's knowledge. Simply and fully believe in that. Whatever God does, He does beautifully. Having said that, Shams gave me a wink and waved goodbye. I watched him thread his way rapidly through the muddy street in the direction of Rumi's house, despite my warnings. The killer, Konya, March 1248. Bastard, idiots. I told them not to come with me. I explained to them that I always work alone and hate to see clients meddling in my affairs. But they insisted, reasoning that since the dervish had supernatural powers, they had to see him dead with their own eyes. Alright, I conceded in the end, but make sure you don't get anywhere near me until everything is over. They agreed. There were 3 of them now. The 2 men I knew from the earlier meeting, and a new guy who sounded just as young and tense as the others. They all had their faces wrapped in black scarves, as if I cared about discovering their identities. After midnight, I was outside Rumi's house. I jumped over the stone wall into the courtyard and hid myself behind a bush. My clients had assured me that Shams of the bridge had the habit of meditating in the courtyard every night, before or after performing his ablutions. All I had to do was wait. It was a windy night, unusually chilly for this time of the year. The sword felt heavy and cold in my palm. The 2 coral beads that embellished its handle rough under my fingers. Just in case, I had also brought with me a small sheathed dagger. There was a pale blue haze around the moon. A few nocturnal animals hooted and howled from afar. I caught the sweet whiff of roses in the wind buffeting the trees. Strangely, the smell made me uneasy. Even before I reached the house, I hadn't been in the best moods, but now it was worse. As I stood there, wrapped by that overly sweet odor, I couldn't help but feel a strong urge to drop the entire plan and leave this spooky place at once. But I stayed, true to my word. I didn't know how much time had passed. My eyelids began to feel heavy, and I kept yawning despite myself. As the wind's fury intensified, for some reason unbeknownst to me, my mind kept racking up memories, dark and vexing, of all the men I had killed. My apprehension surprised me. It usually didn't make me nervous to remember the past, pensive and withdrawn, perhaps even sullen from time to time, but never nervous. I whistled a few songs to boost my spirit, and when that didn't help, I fixed my gaze on the back door of the house and whispered, "Come on, Shams, don't make me wait for too long. Come out into courtyard." No sound, no movement, nothing. All of a sudden, it began to rain. From where I stood, I could see over the slanted walls of the courtyard. Soon, the downpour was so hard that the streets turned into rushing rivers, and I was completely soaked. "Damn it," I said. I was considering giving up for the night when I heard a sharp sound over the clatter of rain on the roofs and roads. There was someone in the courtyard. It was Shams of the bridge, holding an oil lamp in his hand. He walked in my direction and stopped, only a few steps away from the bush where I was hiding. "It is a lovely night, isn't it?" he asked. Scarcely able to contain my confusion, I gasped. Was there someone else next to him? Or was he talking to himself? Did he know I was here? Could he possibly be aware of my presence? My mind was boiling with question. Then another thought occurred to me. How could the lamp in his hand keep burning despite the mighty wind and the heavy rain? And as soon as this question crossed my mind, I felt a shiver down my spine. I remembered the rumors of Shams. He is so excelled in black magic. People said that he could turn anyone into a braying donkey or a blind bat by simply trying a piece of steering from the person's cloth and uttering his evil incantations. Though I had never believed in such nonsense and wasn't going to start doing so now. As I stood watching the flame of Sham's lamp flicker under the heavy rain, I couldn't stay still. I was trembling so. Years ago, I had a master in Tabriz, Sham said as he put the lamp on the ground, thus taking it out of my eyesight. He is the one who taught me there was a time for everything. It is one of the lost rules. What rules was he talking about? What cryptic talk was this? I had to decide quickly whether I should come out of the bush now or wait until he turned his back to me. Except he never did. If he knew I was here, there was no point in hiding. In case he didn't, though, I had to measure well when to come out. But then, as if to deepen my confusion, I noticed the silhouettes of their men waiting under a covering outside the garden wall shift restlessly. They must have been wondering why I hadn't moved to kill the dervish. It is rule number 37, Shams continued. God is a meticulous clockmaker. So precise is his order that everything on earth happens in its own time, neither a minute late nor a minute early. And for everyone, without exception, the clock works accurately. For each there is a time to love and a time to die. In that moment, I understood that he was talking to me. He knew I was here. He had known it before he stepped out into the courtyard. My heart started to race. I felt as if all around me, the air was being sucked away. There was no use in hiding anymore. And just like that, I stood up and walked out from behind the bush. The rain stopped as abruptly as it had started, plunging everything into silence. We stood face to face, the killer and the victim. And despite the strangeness of the situation, everything seemed natural, almost peaceful. I pulled out my sword and swung it with all my might. The dervish dodged the blow with a swiftness I did not expect from a man of his size. I was about to swing again when suddenly a rush of movement swirled into darkness and 6 men appeared out of nowhere, attacking the dervish with clubs and spears. Apparently, the 3 young men had brought friends. The ensuing battle was so intense that they all toppled to the ground, rolling around, regaining footing and failing again, breaking spear after spear into splinters. I stood watching, shocked and furious. Never before had I been reduced to play a witness to a murder I was paid to commit. I was so angry at the 3 young men for their insolence that I could easily have let the dervish go and fought them instead. But before long, one of the men started to yell hysterically, "Help! Help us, Chucklehead! He is going to kill us!" Fast as lightning, I threw up my sword aside, pulled my dagger out of my belt, and dashed forward. The 7 of us knocked the dervish to the ground, and in one swift move I stabbed him in the heart. A single hoarse cry came out of his mouth, his voice breaking at its peak. He didn't stir again, nor did he breathe. Together we lifted his body, which was strangely light, and dumped him into the well, gasping loudly for air. We each then took a step back and waited to hear the sound of his body hitting the water. It never came. "What the hell is going on?" said one of the men. "Didn't he fall in?" "Of course he did," another said. "How could he not?" They were panicking, so was I. "Maybe he got caught on the hook on the wall," the third man suggested. The suggestion made sense. It looked the burden of finding an explanation off our shoulders, and we gladly embraced it, though we all knew there was no hooks on the wheel of the wheels. I don't know how long we waited there, avoiding one another's eyes. A cool breeze crossed the courtyard, sprinkling and thin brown willow leaves around our feet. High in the sky above, the dark blue of the morning was just beginning to break into violet. We might have stayed there until long into the day had the back door of the house not opened. A man walked out. I recognized him instantly. It was Maulana. "Where are you?" he yelled, his voice heavy and concerned. "Are you there, Shams?" At the mention of his name, all 7 of us took to our heels. The 6 men jumped over the garden walls and disappeared into the night. I remained behind, searching for my dagger, which I found under a bush covered with mud. I knew I should not linger there, not even a second, but I couldn't resist the temptation of looking back. And when did I saw Rumi's dagger into the courtyard and then suddenly lurch to his left toward the well, as if guided by an intuition. He leaned forward, peered down, and stood like that for a moment, his eyes adjusting to the semi-darkness inside the well. Then he pulled back, fell to his knees, pounded his chest, and let out a terrifying scream. "They killed him! They killed my Shams!" I jumped over the well and, leaving behind the dagger with the blood of Dervish on it, ran as I had never run before.